Call this the dead hand flop, people, for Masters Edition of, get this, ready? Flynn's Wonderful World of YouTube. It's got a certain ring to it. I know it's a rip on Shell's Wonderful World of Golf, but all we do is reinvent things, bring them back, do it again, do it better, make it a little different, put a modern spin, a modern take on it, if you will. And here's the dead hands flop for Masters Edition, a shot you will have to have, utilizing the bounds in just gravity. Club twirl wouldn't be complete without the club twirl. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in, and we're going to talk about the Masters today, Augusta and DeChambeau, because in my opinion, in my theory, if you will, I believe the game is about to undergo a renaissance, if you will, a serious departure from the norms of the last, 100 years. And I think Augusta will spearhead the change in reining in the ball, equipment, driver, specifically driver length. I think they have the power to do it. Hold on, first, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. It is Masters Week, so let's celebrate the Masters. The first November Masters. Club course will look a little different. We'll play a little different. It's going to be a little softer, which will only be an advantage for the bigger hitters, for DeChambeau, Koepka. Probably comes down to one of those two. Justin Thomas, if he drives it really well. Rory, seeking the ever so elusive final stage to his Grand Slam, the green jacket. He would only be the fifth or sixth member to have the Grand Slam. Nicholas, Hogan, Woods, Gary Player, and the wee little guy, shot heard around the world. I'm forgetting his name at the moment. It'll come to me in a little bit. But anyhow, I think Augusta has a responsibility and the power, given that the R&A, located somewhere near this place, St. Andrews in Scotland, the Royal and Ancient, I don't think they have the nerve quite yet, they've been in discussions, to change the rules of the game in regards to equipment. Nor does the USGA. But Augusta, you know, the special place in golf. You're invited to play at Augusta. You're invited to the Masters. And with that invitation come certain stipulations that I think they will instill after this 2020 Masters campaign and Bryson DeChambeau's added length. I think they could, if they wanted to, say that you're only allowed to play a 45-inch driver. Given DeChambeau's penchant for distance, he is flirting with the idea of bringing out a 48-inch driver to get an extra 6 to 10 miles per hour of ball speed, putting him over 200 miles an hour ball speed, around 205, 210, which would roughly be probably a 390, 400-yard carry. And Augusta would say, if you want to play in our tournament, you are not allowed to swing any club over a 45-inch length, or maybe even 44, to rein it in even more so. And possibly the ball as well. The ball is the thing that is probably the spiciest in regard to distance of anything else out there. If they decided to lower the compression of it so it couldn't quite fly as far, they have it within their power to do so. And I'm not sure whether or not they will, but I think after not the mockery that Bryson's going to make of Augusta and its layout, but he's going to take advantage of certain places, and they can either plant new trees and control the sight lines that it'll have, or I think just bring in the technology. And they've been talking about it for some time. And if you wanted to play at Augusta, then you're more than likely going to abide by their new rules, either playing with a certain golf ball or just bringing in the length of a driver. Should be interesting to see, but that's my theory and how the rules will change. And poor Bryson, I do feel bad for him going through all this work, and it is no joke what that guy is doing. I have the utmost respect for what he's done in trying to find a way to play the game and gain an advantage, every advantage. And as we saw in the US Open, clearly it has paid off greatly for him. You still got to chip it, you still got to have good iron play, and you still got to putt it. I mean, Augusta, putting around Augusta, that guy doesn't get credit for being as an amazing putter as he is. And normally when we see anybody winning at any event, they're in the top 5 in putting. It usually turns out to be a putting contest when we watch any PGA event, especially the Masters. And whoever's best at rolling the rock that week in the top 1, 2, or 3. I mean, I don't know the stats. I haven't looked it up, but I imagine if you look back over the last 5 to 10 Masters, the winner is always in the top 3, maybe? Definitely top 5 in putting, if not number 1 in putting for that week, making something like 99% of anything inside of 10 feet. And, you know, that's the rub of the green. And that brings us to today's lesson, which is going to be not on short game per se yet. We're going to do that in the next installment, but on putting and how to roll the rock as best as you possibly can. I use a Scotty Cameron, massive fan of Scotty Cameron. Beautiful stick. Had a little sound slot put in there, so it gives this club a little ring, if you will. You can hear a little ring off of it when I manage to hit it in the sweet spot. And I had it specifically painted in yellow because I love Masters yellow. I mean, Masters yellow is probably the prettiest color. British Open yellow. I love both of them. Color of gold, the Golden Bear at Augusta. I mean, how much can one love yellow? Win the gold. So in putting, I'm just going to start with 2 things. Line, speed. That's all you need in putting. And line ends up being, in my opinion, more important than speed. If you don't hit your line, it doesn't matter what speed you're rolling the rock at, you're probably not going to hit your aim, your target, where you're trying to get it into, the hole. Every pro uses the line on the golf ball or draws a line on the golf ball and helps them set up that line. I use that line a little bit more as a barometer. I know where I'm aiming, if it's a half a cup out left, 2 feet out left or right, etc. And then over the ball, I will make adjustments. So if I know that is a cup outside, now, if I feel like as I'm over the putt, it's going to break a little bit more than that. And I need to get a little bit more borrow. I need to go a little higher, miss it on the high side, which is massively important to Augusta. I think Ben Crenshaw gave Rory a putting lesson this week, and they mentioned that he said, go higher, pick a higher line so that that ball can die into the hole. The more aggressive line you have, the more length you're going to have on a comeback putt. And 3-putting at Augusta or 3-putting anywhere just loses more strokes than anything. Putting is about 40% of the game. If we think about a tour average, 28, 29 putts per round, and they usually score 70, we'll just use 70 as a number, that's about 40% of their score. So putting is a massive part of golf, massive part of golf. It's called the game within the game. And the better we get at it, it ends up being the great equalizer. So using this line and the line on the back of the putter end up being a significant advantage to knowing where you're aiming, Everything looks a little different when we're looking here compared to when we're looking here. So when we're lined up on that line, now we know exactly where we're aiming. And this brings me to the next point, spot putting. I love looking at a spot ahead of the ball because I am so anal about my takeaway, about my club's path, about what I'm doing in that stroke, that if I notice it going outside or if I notice it going inside, that's all I can think about. And I'm not thinking about the putt anymore. I'm not thinking about the line. I'm not really thinking about the speed. I'm just conscious and aware of the fault, the flaw in that particular putting stroke. And when we're staring 2, 3, 4, 5 inches ahead of the ball, 6 inches ahead of the ball, you can't even see your stroke. And when you're staring at a spot, it's highly likely that you're going to roll the ball over that spot. We watched Jordan Spieth almost win 2 Masters by spot putting, by looking at the hole. He would be over the ball, set up everything. He's a left-hand low. He'd be here, and he would look at the hole. Boom. And he would hit the ball right in the hole. A lot of people thought that was brave of him, but that was his style, and he's gone away from that, and possibly that's why his putting his tournaments, his overall place in the game has deteriorated a little bit, declined a little bit. Maybe he needs to get back to that a little bit. When he was winning, he was the best putter on the planet. It was magical. When he won that British Open and knocked in that putt on the 15th or 16th green from 60 feet, I mean, that is magic. And that's why we watch this game, for those moments where we see magic. When we see Tiger in 2005 on 16, left of the green, chip it up there, we see it go 90 feet away from the hole, 90 feet back toward the hole, tracking right in, and then the Nike logo right on the ball as it falls in. I mean, that's one of, if not probably Tiger's most iconic shot in golf, but it was kind of rolling out like a putt. And we live to see that magic. We live to see those moments and be present. So if we're spot putting and I'm looking at that spot right there, I know if I'm looking at that, I'm probably going to get the ball rolling right over that spot. Then it's just a determinant of how hard we hit it, what the pace of the putt ends up being. Pace is massively important. You can't have a good putt without pace. You can't have a good putt without line. It's a combination of those two. Now, when we take line out by looking at a spot, by spot putting in front of the ball, you're probably going to hit it where you're looking. There's a massive element in putting and in short game and in chipping that when our eyes look, our hand goes. My whole theory in golf is trying to prohibit this hand from doing this. Putting, chipping, almost every element, every swing in the game, I'm trying to eliminate as much of this as I can, either via rotation and trusting the turn, or in this regard, holding in that left and spot putting back here. So if I'm looking forward and I can spot that part of that putt on that line and I can get it started there, then it's just a pace putt. And it's something fun to experiment. You know, you want to work on putts inside of 10 feet. 10 feet is where we want to make our gravy. I think tour averages for 10 footers is something around 60 or 70%. 3 footers is like 98%. 3 footers, if you're looking at 3-4 inches in front of the ball, on a 3 footer, if you get it rolling right over that spot, by the time you look up, bringing back this right hand idea, by the time you look up, the ball is already off the club face. The strike has happened and the ball is already rolling on past, so then you can track it into the hole. So it gets rid of 2 little elements, spot putting, missing our line, or if we happen to look up a little early, which becomes increasingly more important when it comes to the short game. You want to watch that spot, look at that spot, because it happens after the ball, after contact. If I'm looking there and I can hit a putt, highly likely I'm not going to miss that line. And if you don't miss the line, it just comes down to pace thereafter. And if our pace is good, about 12 inches past the hole, 18 inches if you go by Dave Pell's, the rocket scientist, and his lumpy donut ideas, we want to finish with that ball around 12 inches past the hole. You want uphill putts. You know, an uphill putt, we can be aggressive. A downhill putt, we have to have a respect for it. You'll hear a lot of talk of that at the Masters this week. Keeping it below the hole, keeping it below the hole. You get too far above the hole. The 9th hole last year, Tiger Woods had 45, 50 feet downhill because he overcooked a hook over it. He hit it maybe 2 feet. He hit it maybe this hard. That ball rolled all the way, almost got hung up on this shelf, got over it, ended up within a foot. That was one of the decisive moments in that tournament leading him towards victory. If he 3-putts that, or even 4-putts that, if he hit it too hard, it goes off the front of the green. If he doesn't hit it hard enough, firm enough, it doesn't get to that shelf and find that slope to get down to the hole. Then he has to hit that putt again. Then he might hit that one off of the green. And there's just no saying what would have happened if he hadn't hit such a good putt there. And that's why he probably, most likely, is the GOAT, the greatest of all time. So, spot putting. If it's a 3-foot putt, I like to look 3 inches ahead. If it's a 20-foot putt, I like to look 20 inches ahead, which is about right here. I don't go past 20 inches. So if it's like a 50-foot putt, 20 inches right there. I'm looking there, and I know that I can get that ball rolling right over that spot, and then it's just determined by how much pace that putt has. If you don't hit your line, which all of a sudden, you know, some of us don't hit the line, and it ends up going in, and it was a bad read. And there's mixed emotions about that. You hit a bad putt and it goes in, you're like, gosh, I kind of missed that. And it's always fun to let your playing partners know that, like, oh, great putt. And you're like, no, that was actually a terrible putt, but it went in. Oftentimes you'll hit a great putt and it won't go in. You'll hit the most perfect putt. It'll sound beautiful off the face. You'll hit that tiny little sweet spot and it won't drop. Putting is the game within the game. Probably the hardest element of the game when you get to a professional level. That hole is elusive. It can get really, really small. When you're making a lot of putts, it tends to get bigger and bigger. And when we see guys just rolling it in from everywhere, man, it is the great equalizer. And there's nothing better than watching John Rahm this last year. John Rahm when he won the Buick. Tiger at the 2008 Open. If you watch that putt from below eye level on the ground, that ball was bouncing all over the place. And it was almost as if he willed that thing into the hole. You know, we have this connection to everything. We're all stardust, and we can find a way to connect to a target, which ends up being the only way to really play golf. You can play with mechanics, positions, ideas, etc. But when we're playing our absolute best golf, we're connecting to targets. We're envisioning, we're visualizing where the ball needs to go. And the better you get at visualizing, the more committed you get to doing that, the more often it ends up happening. There's something very Zen-like about the meditative state we get into when we're connected to targets, when we're breathing properly, when we're not rushed, when we're relaxed, and we allow that to flow through us rather than trying to make something happen, which is what all of us end up being most guilty of. When this hand is going, we're trying to make something happen. And it ends up being a flaw in the swing because we miss contact. Really rarely, really quite often when this happens, especially in short game, especially in iron play, especially with driver. When that's happening, we're opening the face, we're scooping that face, and we just don't have the discipline to stay in the shot, letting that lead hand hold and rotate through. And that's no more ever present than it is in putting. So to help us get rid of that, I highly recommend people tinker around with spot putting. There's no one way to do this. Putting is probably the most unique element of the game. We can putt here, we can putt here. We used to anchor it to the belly. We can go with the saw grip. Whatever ends up working best for you. Most people, most pros are trying to eliminate as much of that right hand as they can by anchoring it to that left arm, by anchoring it to the belly, by going left hand low so that this wrist doesn't break down when right hand flips at it. So we can be here and maintain that face angle. Most people feel putting back here, right lat back, left lat through, left lat back, right lat through, feeling that putting stroke right between the shoulder blades back there rather than in the arms and the hands. Feeling like we're back here, weight all the way forward. Try and keep as much of your weight forward. Try and keep as much of that club held in the left hand, whether it be left hand low, whether it be left hand high, conventional. I feel like my palms are really looking up. I will get my hands quite high so that that shaft is right in line with those forearms. A low shaft like this ends up having quite a bit of effect on the toe and the sweet spot and a lot of wrist movement. If we get our hands up here, a la Tiger, a la Crenshaw, if we get our hands nice and high up here, Steve Stricker gets way up here. That allows us to really have a nice pendulum back and through. There's a fascinating thing that happens with the golf stroke. And I don't have something here to really describe it better than this golf club. So if I hold this here, the club is always moving straight back and straight through. But as you notice when I'm doing this, the toe is opening and the toe is shutting. My hands aren't doing very much. They're being rather passive. But in allowing that toe to open and allowing it to shut, we're letting the club really swing rather freely. And in letting it swing freely, it takes a good bit of hand action now. Hands can get yippy. They can jab at it. All of a sudden we're going a nice fluid stroke and wham, we go to hit it, which happens a lot in many different areas of the game. But when we take those hands out, we just let them hang, right? Boom, boom. You'll see a lot of golfers set up like this. Boom, thumbs right down, back, through. Doing their best to have as minimal amount of face roll and movement as they can. When you get on a roll putting and it feels like the hole is really massive and big, there's probably no better feeling in the game of golf, just watching every putt go in. We all get excited about it. It doesn't happen very often, but the process again being the goal, setting up the line on the ball, understanding where you are actually aiming, understanding the dynamics of your own particular stroke, if you take it inside, if you take it outside. Putting balls are remarkably helpful. If we can get putting balls rolling on their line, you'll have a better understanding. Most people tend to take it outside, cut across it. I always feel like I kind of go a little inside through, and when we get the ball to roll like that, you know you're getting a true roll. When we get that ball to roll end over end, looking at our intermediate target, wherever you end up looking, you get it to roll end over end like that, and you understand that you're able to do that by working with those balls just on the carpet at home or in your living room, you know, your game will greatly improve. Pros will put a dime on the floor and aim at that dime. I always put balls on my floor, or aim at the legs of chairs or coffee tables or whatever. You get really good inside of 10 feet, you're going to be pretty solid at this game, and you're going to save yourself an immense amount of discomfort on the greens. You'll be more comfortable trusting that process. Try spot putting. I highly recommend it, and enjoy the Masters this week. I don't know, write in the comments. Let me know who you think is going to win this thing. And happy golfing, friends. Cheers.